All right, let's dive right into this explainer. You know that feeling when you spend hours highlighting a textbook, literally until the pages glow in the dark, only to wake up the next morning and realize your brain is just completely empty? Yeah, you are definitely not alone there. Today, we're unpacking this concept from our source material called the mastery loop. We're going to see exactly how to transition from just, staring at words on a page to actually locking them into your long-term memory for good.
So, I want you to be totally honest with yourself for a second. What do you do right after finishing a chapter? Think about it. You've just spent maybe 30 minutes absorbing all these new ideas, you hit that very last sentence, what's your immediate next step? Do you just shut the book and walk away? Or, like a lot of us, do you kind of just scan from page 1 all over again? Most of us default to staring at the page, probably daydreaming about lunch, hoping the knowledge magically seeps in through osmosis. But, as we're going to see, that default habit might actually be the exact thing sabotaging your real understanding.
Which brings us to section 1, the illusion of reading. Okay, so that super common habit of immediately rereading a text right after you finish it, it actually creates what the source calls a mirage of competence. It feels incredibly productive, right? But it's actually a trap. Now, don't get me wrong, reading is important. It is the absolutely essential first step. I mean, you have to expose yourself to the info. But the key takeaway here is that reading is just the intake of information, not the retention of it. Our brains, well, they love the path of least resistance. When your eyes glide over the words you literally just read, your brain goes, yep, I recognize this, and it completely tricks you into believing you've actually learned it. Recognizing that massive difference between just taking something in and truly holding on to it, that's the foundation of the mastery loop.
The source material highlights a pretty huge conflict in our everyday study habits. When you finish a chapter, the deeply ingrained myth we all believe is that reading it again immediately will burn the info deeper into your brain. But the reality? It just reinforces that mirage of competence we just talked about, simply because the text looks visually familiar. Instead, the source is super clear on this. We need to pivot entirely to answering practice questions. Practice questions actually demand your brain does the heavy lifting. It creates this necessary mental friction. When you're forced to literally dig into your memory to pull out an answer, you are forging much stronger neural pathways. You're shifting from passively nodding along with the author to actively proving you grasp the concepts.
So let's move on to section 2, the power of active testing. All right, if we're completely throwing out immediate rereading, we've got to replace it with active testing. But what if the material you're reading doesn't magically have a convenient set of practice questions at the back of the book? Well, the source offers a brilliantly simple workaround. Make a short quiz for yourself. Seriously, don't wait for a teacher to test you. Don't wait for some perfectly formatted worksheet. Take total control of the process. By generating your very own quiz the second you finish reading, you immediately force your brain to filter out what was actually important and frame it as a problem to be solved. You basically become the architect of your own understanding.
Let's break down exactly why this works so well. First off, every single time you successfully pull a correct answer out of your brain, you build genuine confidence. You're validating your understanding in real time. On the flip side, when you inevitably make a mistake, and you will, you instantly remove all the guesswork from your next study session. Ultimately, this whole process of retrieving answers signals to your brain that this data is critical, which helps you remember it for way longer. And look, this isn't just a nice theory, it's literally the exact methodology used by top students. They don't rely on that illusion of reading, they rely on the friction of testing. They know that struggling even just a little bit to remember a fact pretty much guarantees they won't forget it when it actually matters.
You know, we usually completely dread getting things wrong, but let's totally reframe that. Every mistake shows you exactly what to improve. Think about it. When you immediately reread a chapter, you just glide right past your blind spots because you don't even know that they're there. You're just nodding along. But a mistake on a self-made quiz? That isn't a failure. It's a highly precise, targeted map for your next study session. It's basically your brain's way of saying, hey, we need to reinforce this specific connection right here. Embracing those mistakes saves you literally hours of pointless review and points you exactly where your attention is actually needed.
And that brings us to section 3, the mastery loop cycle.
Now, let's bring all of this together into a seamless, repeatable habit. Step 1. Learn. This is your initial focused reading. You absorb the new ideas. Step 2. Test. And remember, absolutely no immediate rereading here. You put the text down and jump right into your practice questions or that self-generated quiz. Step 3. Improve. Look directly at your mistakes so you can target the specific gaps in your knowledge and only go back to the text to review the parts you actually got wrong. And finally, Step 4. Repeat. You just run the cycle again until that mental friction is gone and the recall is completely effortless. This 4-step sequence is the engine that guarantees long-term mastery. It totally transforms a passive chore into a highly efficient active system.
If we had to boil down the crucial takeaway of this entire explainer, it comes down to this one singular, bold idea from the source material. Testing yourself is even more powerful. Yes, reading is essential, obviously, but if you truly want to perform at your peak and build unshakable confidence in your knowledge, you have to completely embrace the test. Testing isn't just some way to check what you learned after the fact. No, the test itself is the way you learn. It is the exact mechanism that locks information firmly into your long-term memory.
So there it is. You now have the blueprint. The very next time you finish reading an article, a chapter, or some incredibly complex report, I want you to resist the urge to just gloss over it again. Stop. Create a quick quiz. Run the loop. Force your brain to actually recall the information, embrace your mistakes, and honestly, watch your retention absolutely skyrocket. I'll leave you with this one final thought. What will you test yourself on today?